coffee? How many of us? There's 5, right?
The 4, the 5?
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll just swap them. Yeah.
You want to switch? You want to?
Or alternate?
Are you want to switch or you
Okay, no, you're good.
Oh, that's Drea, Suan, and... Okay, yes, that's correct. Everyone got water? Danny doesn't.
Yeah.
How many psychologists is
I know, it's so great.
I don't want to talk about it, okay? I don't want to talk about it.
And then if there's any problems, we have to move some mics to share them.
You said we just move it aside to it if you need to.
That's always a big deal.
Right.
Like, make sure you stay with the hot mic.
Right, right. That's why I was like, ooh, this is what it's all. I'm like, I feel all official and such. Yeah, right.
Finally, nice to meet you.
We need to get Brad together.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you exhausted yet from your time?
Non-stop banter.
We got it. You're safe. I got it. Okay. You like Batman, right? Great job.
Thank you so much.
During these times when I'm like, what can I say? Can I say fuck I?
No, I just have a question. I'm like a paper person. I was like, let's do that.
How did it go?
You just gotta go.
But in case we lose our points.
And this is gonna go out of order and throw us all off.
I lied. I just
Just
like
go.
kind of
See what happens.
If I go on a tangent.
I can even see myself because I did not print anything else like this. Yeah. I'm like, I really, and then we still agreed with the
Yeah, we're lost here. So, you know. Oh, and I heard you met Emily, who I wanted to make sure you met.
Oh, we met briefly, but yes, I'm so glad I caught the last time.
Al, are you sticking around? after
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Okay, we'll get you after this. All right, yeah.
So, let me get out of your way.
Oh, great job.
All right.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for I'm excited.
You saved your spot right smack down.
Thank you.
MVP, right?
You're like the big dog of this
Well,
panel.
we set up Kirby for everyone to see. That's just right.
I love it. I didn't know what Kirby was.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
This is technically 3 panels, but the mixer that I was at earlier, they have you prepare on
All
the
right.
side, and you do sort
We are 1 minute to go.
of brief subtitles.
So,
Not 2 minutes, but it's
please,
you start
mic check now? No?
Yeah.
All right. We'll get, 12 o'clock. Perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's panel discussion titled Geek Out, Breathe In, Using Pop Culture to Support Mental Health on Campus. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kumeyaay people. We honor their enduring presence and stewardship of this land. I encourage all of us to educate ourselves about the true history of this land and to uplift the voices and experiences of Native people. My name is Dr. Christine Catipon. My pronouns are she, they, sha, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist from Stanford University and the moderator for this panel of fellow psychologists. We have 2 things in common. We all work in university settings, and we all love talking about anything that would likely be represented at San Diego Comic-Con. Even though this weekend is the first time most of us have met each other, we have already felt like old friends, and I'm sure it will continue forever and ever. So today, our panelists will explore how pop culture and fandoms are not just sources of entertainment, but also can serve as tools for emotional processing, identity exploration, and building therapeutic rapport in our therapy work with students in higher education. So let's start this panel by learning a bit more about our panelists. Could everyone please introduce yourselves with your name, pronouns, at which university you are employed, and with answering one of the following icebreaker questions. Number one, if you are currently wearing something from pop culture, please share what it is and why you like it. Or two, what fictional character do you think would be a good therapist and why? And I will start with, that was such a nerd thing to do, right? Collide into things. So I do that all the time. So I'm wearing a picture of Derpy, the demonic tiger from K-pop Demon Hunters. Yes! Because he's way cuter than a Labubu. And he is, I'm obsessed with the movie and the soundtrack. And I absolutely decompress by watching cartoons after a long day of supporting our students. So we'll go down the row. We'll start with Dr. Helen Hsu. Just go on in.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. Library is my favorite place ever, so this is such a great way to end this week. I'm Dr. Helen Hsu. I'm the Director of Outreach at Stanford University. I use she, her, top pronouns. And I am the homicidal doll, Young-hee, from Squid Games. And
I love it.
first of all, there's only so many Asian characters you can dress up as, but also I do believe sort of the theme of Squid Games that end state capitalism is fascism and other horrible things, and so it's a timely sort of theme for our times, unfortunately.
Yes. If I could snap, I would. Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donte Bernard. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Missouri. Before I shout out anything about myself, I want to give a shout out to my dad. It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday! Woo!
Birthday. So I'm rocking
Superman.
Superman. I'm rocking Batman today. There's something inspirational about a man who's not a superhero, who does everything to mold himself to be the perfect version of himself. It can go toe-to-toe with folks like Superman and Green Lantern and do all those things. I think it's always an aspirational goal of mine. He might have a little bit of money. I don't, but it's all right. We'll make it work, right? But that, for me, is always a motivational goal to achieve, too. Excited to be here.
Happy birthday. I'm Danny Martinez. Pronouns are he, him, el. I am a clinical sports psychologist at UCLA. I'm wearing my Kirby shirt, and I've got my Kirby squad back there. I have my kids, Ellie 7 and Jack is 5, and I don't know if we have gamers in the audience. But this is one of the beauties of fandoms, is that we get to pass these things on between generations. They asked me for help with hard levels and bosses, and I'm like, nope, you have no idea how many hours I had to deal with like one boss. You're gonna go through that too. That's a good life lesson right there. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Well, hello, my name is Suan Stapatyanon. I'm a staff psychologist at the University of California, Irvine. I go by she, her pronouns. And my attire today is inspired by Janet from The Good Place.
Oh, yes.
I
Yes.
think we have some Good Place fans, and I picked this outfit because I'm a huge fan of anything written and created by Michael Schur. So we got Good Place, The Office, Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Man on the Inside. Those are my comfort shows, and they bring me such joy. So my outfit is kind of an appreciation of the Schurniverse.
Love it. Hi, happy Sunday of Comic-Con. How y'all doing? Are you feeling good? Good. This is the place to be Sunday at Comic-Con. My name is Dr. Drea Letamendi. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I work at UCLA. I'm the director of the Compassionate Response Program, which is a mobile crisis program supporting students in distress. When I'm not doing that, I am a mental health and psychological science advisor for entertainment media studios and gaming studios. I've worked with Marvel, DC, Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, and I bring mental health science to the storytelling in those industries. And my pronouns are she, her, and ella. I went back to my hotel to get my Ripley watch.
Nice.
So if folks like Alien or Aliens, Ripley has this amazing, it's actually 2 Casio watches, but someone had made this for me. And I love Ripley because, yes, a strong, noble character, but also she saves the cat.
All right, well, let's dive into it. First question, how does pop culture help bridge generational or cultural gaps between therapists and students, and how do you think it can be used as a tool for self-exploration? Yeah. Anybody?
I think one of the really cool things about pop culture, comics specifically, is it's transcendent. It transcends generations, cultures, times. And I can't tell you how many times when I'm working with someone, they'll bring up a reference, like Billy, the Blue Ranger from Power Rangers. And like, I just feel like I am out of place, like he is. I can't read social cues, or like Will from Stranger Things. And there's these times when these comments are made, and if you can latch onto it, right? Not only does it enhance that therapeutic alliance, like you get me, right? You can talk Avatar, The Last Airbender, right? Those types of things. But it also allows you to explore emotions on a level where you're almost speaking a different language, right? Like I can use these characters as a way to mirror what you're going through, and we can process this on a level that we otherwise may not do, right? So I think comics allows us this entry point, right? And this almost highway of exploration that we otherwise may miss if we don't aren't able to hit on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the language part of it. When I bring in pop culture references in my therapeutic setting, I feel like it's almost another language that we bring in, a shared language between the therapist and the client, where you're able to communicate on such a deeper level. And it's like a shorthand where you don't have to really explain yourself. You can just kind of say something, and naturally and organically that builds a rapport when you're able to communicate on that depth of a level. And that transcends any kind of cultural, age, any other kind of gaps that we may have between the therapist and the client. I mean, I don't work with a lot of people who are 50-year-old Asian women, so this really can help build the trust and the rapport between my clients and myself.
Yeah. I think it really helps level the field too, because we're all doctors, and sometimes people can come up to us and feel really intimidated, like, oh no, but then all of a sudden you see the Comic-Con thing in the office, and they're like, oh, do you panel? What animes do you watch? And there was one time I did an intake, and my client was like, oh, I only watched 2, Apothecary Diaries and Freeway, and I was like, get out, those are the only 2 that I watch too. And then immediate rapport. So not only does it bring in the depth, but it also helps level the playing field, and all of a sudden they see us as people instead of whatever this might feel like, right?
Even my
So,
office, I have like Star Wars and superhero decoration, and that's like
Perfect.
always an icebreaker, a good
Yeah.
starting point for somebody coming in for the first time. Oh, you like that, and you can kind of talk about it before
Yeah.
you dive right in to therapy talk.
I love that. Does everyone mind sharing if they have like nerd stuff in their office that like clients have like commented on?
I have so many different, over the years, what I'll share too is, since this is also a vulnerable space for a lot of us, is that growing up, I was not very open about the fandoms that I loved, comic books, Batman in particular, and animation and things that I was actually bullied for liking. But as an adult, over the years, I grew to find more courage and being more myself and unmasking a bit. And over the years, I've kind of like put more, action figures and collectibles in my office. And now if you see it, it's like an explosion of pop culture. So there's like Star Wars everywhere and Batman, an entire shelf just like full of collectibles. And, these folks are right. It's a conversation starter. It accelerates relationships. It accelerates interpersonal effectiveness. And you don't even have to know necessarily what the other person, it's great if you overlap and there's things that you can talk about. But I'll never forget, I was talking to a student and I asked them, is there a character that they really connect to? And they said Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen any of the movies, and I thought, oh gosh, I don't know anything about this character. And then I just said, tell me more about him. You know, what is it about him that you like? And I learned so much about this student just from him naming all these bold, brave characteristics of this fictional character. And then that accelerated our relationship.
Yeah, perfect, yeah. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, you know what I was just thinking? I've been in Drea's office, and yes, there are a lot of things. There's lots of Star Wars stuff, lots of
That's how
like
you connected.
Darth Vader stuff, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
So-
lots of dark side
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking about like what you said in terms of like when our clients walk into our office and what do they see? You know, like the very first things that the very first impression that they have of you. And so I thought I'd take a second to just like plug a couple of books that I just encountered yesterday. So I went to a panel on sports in graphic novels, and everyone talked about their graphic novels, and everyone talked about how sports and comics don't really match up. And I was like, yeah, they do. I work with student athletes, and you know what? Sometimes we get into these conversations about things because comics allow us to get into those conversations that otherwise in sports we don't really kind of get into. You know, you always have to be tough. You always have to be the strongest, the fastest. And comic books a lot of the times are about like, I'm actually struggling under all of this. And so like, for example, we've got Dragon Hoops here, which some of you might have heard of. It's an incredible story by an Asian American writer. And then we have Out of
have
Left
that one.
Field. Again, another book about someone who loves sports, but maybe also had other things that they weren't really able to express because of the setting that they were playing sports in. And then Almost Sunset, about a kid who was trying to figure out how to make it throughout the day, fasting and waiting until sunset to be able to eat again because of their religious practices, and not being able to say anything about it because they didn't think that anyone would understand. So I'm going to put these in my office. I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to put them in my office. And then I have student athletes that walk in, and they might be like, hey, what's that book right there? I'll be like, let me tell you about it, you know? And so definitely the things that we put in our spaces, whether you're a psychologist or not, they can be those conversation starters, or if anything, they can be the thing that sets the mood for safety.
Sure.
Right? Like, it sounds like these things are welcome in your space. Let's see where this can go.
How about you, Donte?
So I have a lot of Batman things, of course, right? And I will be honest, Artist Alley this year got the best of me here at Comic-Con. So I have a lot of Avatar The Last Airbender pieces that I bought. I had to tell my dad to stop me. I was like, just push me away so I don't buy anything else, right? And those are all going up in my office, and I really look forward to that. And maybe my home, too.
Great.
I'll say I have subtle touches of Star Wars, Wonder Woman, Star Trek, some of the older things. I have a ton of plants in my office, y'all. The point is it needs to not look clinical. But I do appreciate Danny mentioning safety, right? This idea of the frame you set. I don't want, when we were in training, it was like, the best office, the best therapist is a blank slate.
Right.
Whatever. You know, as if you could be a blank slate, you know, and I think clients need to know who you are. And I don't even have, I have lots of rainbows in my office too, but I don't have this is a safe space sign up because I don't decide that, you decide that. If this is safe, if you feel safe here, so. And I do remember someone once just saying, oh, hey, I like your socks. And I'm like, what? And they were like, yeah, either like, I think they were probably Star Wars socks that day. So that became this discussion about, the things that we like that we don't always, as Drea said, feel comfortable necessarily sharing because it's cringy or whatever.
In a way, it's almost sounding like decolonizing therapy because all of us are people of color here, and we've learned very Western ways of doing therapy, like the couch and not looking at people, but you know, in a way, self-disclosure that happens from us just sharing our authentic selves with our nerdy stuff is a form of saying, hey, we don't have to practice therapy the way it's always been practiced. We can actually incorporate, you know, a multicultural view, a diverse view, and it's such an important message, I think, right now with everything that's going on. So that leads to our second question. How does pop culture help in supporting students from underrepresented or marginalized communities, especially in relation to mental health stigma? Deep.
Okay, I'll go first on this one, but there's a reason, y'all, if you've noticed, so many of the protagonists are orphans, immigrants, trauma survivors, you know, that I think regardless of our specific identity, like, okay, so you're not from Krypton, or you're not Harry Potter living under the stairs, but I think a lot of us know that feeling of like, nobody understands me, or I am being bullied, and so having that storytelling arc, I think, is so powerful. When you do see representation, it matters so much. But even if it's not clearly your identity, I think the stories matter a lot. They're stories about hope, and they're about overcoming, and they're about healing, and that is a universal. And those are themes I think that are a thread to talk about with clients. So I will have clients say, have you seen Pose? And that was the beginning of a discussion about gender identity. Was first, let's talk about Pose. Or are there any fans of Beef? Right, that's been a segue to talk a lot about Asian American rage. Rage and depression under high-functioning exteriors. And so having this story to go to was a shorthand to get into something really important that is not really represented in the common, like, narratives.
Yeah.
I think something that Jalen had mentioned in the last panel was this idea of, you know, in the Black community, for example, mental health is not something that we talk about often, right? And unfortunately, we see comics often perpetuate that as well, right? We all know the stories of Supermans, the Batmans, the Spider-Mans, right? And their tragic histories and the way they overcame that. But if we parallel that with the stories of, say, Cyborg or Miles Morales or other folks, right, who have gone through very similar backstories and came to have these amazing ways of overcoming it, right? We don't really see that much until recently. And if we think about, right, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and their beautiful depiction of grief after the passing of T'Challa. If we think about the ways in which the Beyond the Spider-Verse talked about after Uncle Aaron passed and how Miles had to deal with grief. There's just been these amazing depictions that have served as these platforms for us. And if we couple that even with pop culture outside of comics, so sports, right? We have folks like Naomi Osaka, right? Simone Biles, taking these stands to say that my mental health matters. And we've seen this serve as this nice catalyst for many clients of mine who have came into my room and said, like, this is what I'm going through, but I can't talk about it. I haven't been able to talk about it before. Can I talk about it now, right? Those names and these stories serve as important exemplars for us to operate off of, right? And I think many folks are using that as platforms for their own self-exploration as well.
You know, going to therapy, especially for the first time, is hard for any of us, right? And a lot of the students I see, they're coming in for the first time. You know, you're not sure what to expect. You know, you might come from a culture or a background where therapy is stigmatized. It's not talked about. You're not talking about your feelings or anything about your mental health. And so when you're coming from that kind of group, all the fears, all the barriers of going to therapy are magnified. And what I'm hearing from a lot of my students is there's three main reasons why they decided to take the chance to come to therapy. One, their friends encourage them or their partners. Two, things have gotten really bad and they can't cope anymore. And three, they've seen something in media that encouraged them, like some kind of positive reference to therapy, to mental health. And so, like we all have been talking about, even in the previous panel, representation does matter. So you represent therapy in a positive way, or talking about feelings in a positive way. I mean, even like, I don't know if you guys have been hearing this, but I've had a lot of students bring up Good Will Hunting, and that's a movie that's been around for a while, but now people are bringing it up like, hey, that made me realize I should give therapy a try. You know, maybe the therapist isn't like this person taking notes and being a blank slate, but somebody who is human as well. And also celebrities who really encourage people to talk about their well-being and share their own experiences with it too. I've heard like, oh, Chris Evans, you know, said he goes to therapy, so it was good enough for Captain America, it was good enough for him.
Sure.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so, my gosh, so even if it's not all the way, representation is so important, and I think that that's one of the things that stands out to me today is that the amount of media we have that gives voices to hidden identities and diverse people of diverse backgrounds. I feel like that is the starting point where you can actually see yourself on the screen. Just from my own experience, for example, the first time I saw a poster for Rogue One, and I saw Diego Luna, and I was like, oh my God, I literally said this, and like I teared up. I was like, I'm in Star Wars, like finally, you know? And then I'm not kidding, like on my way up here, I was trying to listen to all these podcasts and stuff, like on the drive down from LA, and I heard the Diego Luna interview with Conan, and he literally said the same thing. He said, well, a little bit different, but he said, I never thought I would do this. I never saw anyone like me in Star Wars. And I was like, that's it, that's a starting point. And I think I just really appreciated you mentioning that.
Yeah. Well, that's a really great segue into our next question. Yeah, y'all, you don't need me. You can just keep on going. Can you share a little bit about how you incorporate fandoms and pop culture into your work as a psychology in university settings, particularly with how it might help students articulate complex emotional experiences?
All right. I think that it's, I appreciate the themes coming up around decolonizing and demystifying the field of psychology, because I think a lot of us, as we studied psychology, became clinical psychologists and researchers and scholars that, kind of what Danny's saying about media, we didn't see ourselves in this work. Right. And so we had to immediately figure out our sense of belonging in the field and how to welcome the people that we're helping, the people that we're counseling and mentoring and teaching. And so a lot of that work, as far as my journey in this field, has kind of been this like blending and transcending borders. I grew up as a mixed race child of immigrants. Mother's Chinese, father's Ecuadorian, came to the States. My sister and I grew up in this very mixed, bilingual, bicultural household. And I never met anyone who had my cultural heritage, but it just felt like, that's how I grew up, and so it felt very normal to me. And it was interesting as I traced back some of the professional identities I've had, they've all been kind of in this in-betweenness. So as a counselor, as a psychologist, I've worked in places where I was the only one who had a PhD in mental health or who was, let's say, a therapist or counselor. In the job I have now, I am not really working out of a clinic. I'm meant to go into the community and serve students where they are, the dorms, the classrooms, the places where they might be in distress. And the idea is you may not know how to get to us, but we can get to you. And once this program was built, I thought, well, this is my calling. I'm translating psychological science in everything that I'm doing. And I'll never forget, when we see ourselves in certain spaces where those are the people that make the decisions, right? The people who make the decisions about who portrays the protagonist in a Star Wars film, or who gets to decide who the next Batman is. And by the way, it's a Mesoamerican Batman. Batman Azteca is coming out this fall.
Awesome.
Yes, yes. And I'll say, even in that example, as I'm celebrating this Spanish-speaking Batman character, it's never been done before. The voice actors are Mexican, the producers are Latinx, and yet, I knew this would happen, but I'm encountering the hate online. Why do we need this? Why is this happening? Why is it so woke? And so, we're constantly, and this happens with our students, where's my sense of belonging even when the structures and the institutions and the programs and the centers say that I belong here? That's not the feeling that they always get. And so I think it's our responsibility to show up, right? This is who I am fully, authentically, and this is how I, do my best to be in that in-betweenness and to kind of represent my identity in the best way I can, and to encourage students to do the same, even if they're struggling, even if they if they experience that sense of thwarted belongingness. Yeah. And when we find ourselves, there's such a celebration. Back when the second Doctor Strange movie came out, I'll never forget, America Chavez was played by Xochitl Gomez, and there's a line in that movie where, the white main character Dr. Strange tells her, like, you know, how do you do this? How do you, like, jump between worlds? That's her superpower. She can basically, like, hop in between worlds seamlessly. And she's like, I just do. This is just what I do. And I felt such a sense of representation. Like, some of us, that's just what we do. And there's no why about it. That's just our existence. That's just who we are. And, you know, I think that's powerful to build from these stories and to help students feel that sense of, you know, they are seen, they are heard, they belong here. And there's folks who are in positions of leadership and in power who are, you know, helping them feel like that they can also succeed, achieve, and find, you know, positive mental health in these spaces.
I love what you shared, Drea. I mean, imposter syndrome, right? Like, it's something that all of us have dealt with, but I think for a lot of our students, especially nowadays, it's like the systems were not built for them. The higher systems, you know, it just kind of lends itself to not feeling included. And so to have representation, to have people who get that, who speak their language like us or other higher ed administrators, teachers, faculty, like, it helps them feel like they belong there, even when systems are telling them they don't. I think, Danny, you wanted to say something about this as well?
For sure. Yeah, and I feel imposter syndrome being around incredible professionals like you all, and hearing Drea talk, I'm just like, wow. What was I going to say about that? Yeah, so something that happens, at least in my practice, that might be kind of interesting, is that I work with athletes, elite athletes, and so past, current, future professional athletes, Olympians, former Olympians. And so there's a very sort of like, this is what we do, this is how I think, this is like sort of where I exist. And so most of them, when they come in, I would say literally maybe 90% of them, oh, it's because I'm feeling lost when I'm about to throw, or I need to run a little bit harder, or like I'm having trouble like lifting this weight or something like that, like very specific goals that they have. And sometimes we work on those things, but almost always it's something else. Yeah. Right? And so I have this little sign on my desk that says, mind what you have learned, save you it can. I don't know if anyone remembers that quote. Yeah, Yoda, okay, yeah, because of the phrasing, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's right after Luke, so all my Star Wars fans, you're gonna know, right after Luke completes his training in Dagobah, these are some of the words that Yoda offers to him. And it's very similar to what happens with athletes. And it's sort of like, remember your training. Like, you don't have to learn your sport in the moment that you're doing it. You have to remember your training. And then all of a sudden, it becomes about a bigger thing. It's like, you don't have to learn all these new lessons about life. You already have a lot of them with you. You don't have to learn how to be resilient. You already are resilient in so many ways. And so, like, the ability to kind of like bridge those conversations, again, it goes back to that first question, the second question. This is just a shared language that allows us to express things that are very difficult to talk about, especially for student athletes who are never really encouraged to say, oh, like, how are you feeling today? It's like, no, like, are you ready? Like, get ready to go. It's like the feelings don't matter, you know? So these things regularly come up in therapy, and they are really a good bridge into those conversations, at least with athletes. Yeah.
Can I recommend one scholarly article, since we're on the subject of imposter phenomenon? Dr. Nellie Tran has a published article about infiltrator syndrome.
Yes.
You're an infiltrator, you're not an imposter. I love it, and that is a reframe and a way of thinking about it, which also a lot of students have really enjoyed.
Agree. Thank you. So we've been talking about how great we use, how great it is to use pop culture, but, you know, it's not always perfect. What are some of the challenges in using pop culture as a therapeutic tool, such as when fandoms become a significant part of a student's coping mechanism, or when a student might strongly identify with a character or fandom that has problematic or controversial elements? Because they're not all great.
People get canceled. I mean, yeah, that's grief work, you know? We can't always control who controls the fandoms, and sometimes the things, you know, look, sometimes the things that we love, you know, we have to find a way to work through if we still want to be a part of it, or we still want it to be a part of our life. One example I can think of that's impacting me right now is that I've been working on this project on a book for The Sandman. Sandman is a graphic novel by Neil Gaiman,
Yeah.
had a popular first season on Netflix. Is not going to have a popular second season,
It's
but
not great.
if you know about Neil Gaiman, is essentially multiple people have voiced his essay of them, and when I was working on this book chapter, my entire chapter was about how the character Death helps us through grief, and how his work, now we're focusing on actually the show on Netflix, so the entire book actually is written, most of it is written and edited by a UCLA lit professor, and I was invited to write a chapter specifically on psychology and grief, and it's coming out in, I think, like a month or two. And I'm not, this is actually the first time I've been really talking about it publicly. I'm not really promoting it because I don't feel comfortable supporting this man's work. And I'm myself, like, I'm uncomfortable talking about this. Myself, I'm kind of working through, I'm so proud of the chapter that I wrote. And I went through grief, writing about grief and how these characters are so important to us and the processes that we go through to overcome hardships, and especially to be losing somebody and missing somebody, and how this is what I'm going through now. Like, I'm grieving a relationship that is, to think about Dr. Al's work, this is a parasocial relationship or a mediated relationship that is now ruptured. And it's about my professional identity, it's about my personal identity, and I have to figure out how to work through that. Now, linking this to, the work that we do with students, I've worked with students who had tattoos that they had to like redo or cover up because of the relationship with the author, the creator, the fandom, et cetera. And so, this is a very real process, and I think that one way to approach this is to use the tools that we have to really kind of lean into grief and loss work, and to be as non-judgmental as possible, because some people decide to stay in that relationship, and that's their choice, that's their prerogative. And to think about not everything is the whole thing, it's the sum of the parts. And is there a way for us to have dynamic, complicated relationships like that, where we still get to love the thing or parts of the thing, and separate the parts that we don't agree with?
Yeah.
I think there's also an underlying message that one can get from who someone is associating with. I think about this a lot with The Boys. Folks, there's been this big gravitation towards Homelander.
Yeah.
And we know the allegory of who this person is supposed to represent. But we can also think about the same thing with the parallels that exist with folks who are gravitating towards Joker, right? Or Killmonger, for example. These folks share this common thread of just wanting to see the world burn, right? And tearing down the establishment. And I think we can all resonate with that in some ways, right? Especially in the current kind of context that we live in today. No one likes to feel powerless, so let's burn it all down, right? Now, I think there's some issues if we overly gravitate towards that person, and as Drea mentioned, refuse to come back towards the other side, right? But I do think it can offer us a nice grain of understanding if we just ask, like, tell me a little bit more about why, for example, Homelander speaks to you, right? Tell me more about the times when maybe he doesn't, right? Are there times when he's misstepping? If you say no, like, maybe you should get out of office. But like, if there's some times where like, no, maybe like this, I don't agree with everything he's done, right? Okay, so we can draw some lines, right? You can identify some areas where perhaps it might not be great. I think it can lend some good insight and to recognize that, we all have these feelings, and it's good to recognize them. And it's also not always okay to act out on those actions, right? So what do we do when we feel like I want to act in the Homelander way, right? To make ourselves not do that. And I think that's the choice in many of the tools that will come in. Do I want to act on my Batman mind, for example, right? And know that I have this rage, but I'm not going to go over the edge. Or I'm going to take the Joker route, right? And take everything out. I think there's a really good educational piece, and it becomes this shorthand, as we had talked about, right? I had a Batman day today. Or I made a Joker decision today, right?
Yeah.
Or I messed up, right? Where it kind of helps us, and also helps us to also give ourselves some grace in time when we mess up as well.
That reminds me of the rational mind versus
exactly
the,
right. That's exactly
you
right.
know, the emotional mind, but we want to work with the wise mind, which is a combination of everything. Yeah, you know, I really resonate with what both of you share because I used to be such a Potterhead. And one of my favorite, like, moments with a client was when they were talking about their trauma and they had an aha moment and they said, "Oh my gosh, Christine, it's like you're Harry and I'm Dobby and you just gave me a sock." And it like released them from their trauma story. And like now J.K. Rowling's a TERF. And I'm like, well, how do I resolve that? Being part of the identities that I share. So I really appreciate the grief component because it's not an all or nothing thing. We can still love the parts that resonate for us and reject the things that don't. I mean, several of the original movies' characters don't agree, but you know, they have worked their ways into our lives for the last how many years, and so I think we're allowed to take what works for us and reject the things that don't.
I mean, that's allegory for real relationships.
Right.
How many of us have family members, friends that we absolutely love and have parts that we absolutely cannot
Preach.
tolerate or, you know, ethically and value-wise. And
Yeah.
so we have to be able to hold complexity, and that's a life skill.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the Star Wars and Star Trek panel, Drea, they talked about, like, you know, emotional regulation, holding complexity.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, she's a horrible, hateful, like TERF now who harms a lot of people that I care about deeply and serve. And yet, we've talked about Harry Potter a lot in grief work. That I'm the core of the grief team at Stanford, and we talk about that. Just that one scene where she talks about there are things that only people who've seen death can see. And all of us who've known grief know that. You know, and for our young grievers who are so lonely in their pain because so many of their peers haven't seen it. Like, that's such a beautiful metaphor that we've used. And so we'll keep that part and just
Yeah.
not deal with that.
All right, I
One
want to,
more
oh, sorry,
thing,
go ahead.
that I do is looking a lot at character arcs. So you can have a character who may start off in a way that may not be very pro-social or very positive. But many characters will take an arc. I'll take The Good Place, for example. They're all in the so-called good place, the bad place, because of behaviors that they engaged in or things that they did prior to getting there. But coming together as a community, as a team, working together, they all developed and grew so much. So we talk in therapy about, well, what was that turning point? What can you do as a turning point to turn that character arc around?
Love it.
I'm holding on to the hope that that's the character arc for people like Gaiman and Rowling, where maybe they're going through their dark Gaiman, dark Rowling era, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Okay, I want to leave time for questions, so we'll end on a positive question for our panelists before we go into the audience. Can you briefly share an example of a breakthrough moment when discussing pop culture in the therapy session helped a student open up or process something difficult, or when it transformed the therapeutic process?
All right, I'll go. So I use a lot of music in my work, music references, hip hop music, for example. And when we talk about connections between our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions, our basic CBT principles, right? We use the acronym BEAT, right? B-E-A-T. B stands for body sensations, ER is our emotions, A is the actions and urges, and T is our thoughts, right? What I found is that we can map on this beat to anything that we do, right? So turning on music, each song can give us a different beat. Any situation can give us a different beat. And I work with adolescent boys often, and asking them, how do you feel, is often a question that's gonna drive you to insanity, right? Because they can't answer that question. But if you can ask them, tell me your beat right now, right? They might not be able to tell you everything around there, but they might be able to tell you a sensation, right? Or a thought, or an emotion. And one person stands out to me. He would go play basketball at our community center. And when he was there, a kid pushed him down, and he has a history of acting out aggressively. And he came and he's like, Donte, I used my beat today. He's like, I found that I got hot, and I was really wanting to act out, right, and knock this dude out. But I thought, right, what would Donte do at this moment, right? And what would he say if I came back, right, and told them that I acted out on this. So I really often come back and think about the ways in which we can creatively use these principles of therapy to help equip youth with the skills to be able to move forward and use it in their everyday lives.
Okay, thank you.
That was a Tinkerbell moment. I don't think your client would call it, but I had a client who once said, "Oh, I think of you as Tinkerbell." And I said, "What?" And she's like, "You know, the little voice, right? That what you taught is like there at the shoulder, like, yeah." And I think that's true. And when you talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, we call it CBT also. We call it ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, DBT. And we talk about, with my clients, sometimes Vulcans and Kung Fu characters, because all of that stuff is appropriated or has been going on in East Asia for thousands, literally thousands of years. So these are practices that are ancient, definitely having to incorporate the body and all of this. So again, and for a lot of my students of color, that part is also healing. Like, yes, learn the skills and also understand that this has always belonged to you and to your people. And you don't have to, do it this one way. And you may not need to be paying like all that money to go to this kind of therapist, right? Like, believe that it's you, because there's a lot of internalized depression in people in some of our communities. Like, I've literally had students be like, "Oh, well, Asian parents," or like, "We don't know about," or "We don't care about mental health." And it's like, no, that's not true. What you see is not caring or not knowing as a result of trauma and colonialism. But go further back, we had all these practices. The music, the art, the bodily practices, meditation, and like, let's take it all back.
Yeah.
It's not just giving you the skills to keep dealing with all the horrible things as we're on fire, but really putting you in a system, in a place of knowing where you are in the world, that you belong here, you own these things. And you have to deal with stuff that is not just your individual stressors. As the previous panel said, we have a whole macro system that we're trying to help support people to live in.
Anyone else?
I use Star Wars a lot in student mentoring and student therapeutic relationships, and sometimes it's about the storytelling and just, as I said before, like, tell me more about why you connect to a character, and kind of let that allow the client to be more authentic and open up, and even, many stories have these arcs, the hero's journey and challenges and times in our lives where we feel stuck, or we feel a sense of we're lost or we're adrift. And so I try to bring those moments in to learn more about where my clients have felt stuck or adrift. And with Star Wars, I bring a lot of CBT using Star Wars, and mindfulness is pretty heavily present in a lot of Star Wars, thinking about how Jedi use the Force. And one of my favorite moments is when Rey is examining this other part of herself that is calling to her. And in The Last Jedi, it actually kind of feels like the dark side. It's this powerful part of the Force that's asking her to look into darkness, and it's asking her to find her people. She's believing it's about her parents, and she goes, and it's a version of the Dagobah cave, right? She goes into that deep abyss, and she sees all these reflections of herself. She's hoping to see her parents. She doesn't see them. So that storytelling, I think, can be really powerful around sense of identity and finding your people and not knowing who you are. But for the mindfulness part, sometimes I'll use that idea about the Force. It's present, we can't see it, but we can sense it, and practicing mindfulness exercises can be important. And then lastly, I've converted an exercise to do progressive muscle relaxation, and I call it Robot Rebel. And so the robot piece, if you've ever done this before, like you need to tighten all your muscles and then you relax them, and that's how usually really young clients will learn how to manage their anxiety. But Robot Rebel is an adaptation I've done where, I ask them their favorite robot, 3PO, K2SO, whoever, and we imagine that we're the robot, and then we imagine we're our favorite rebel, where we can relax our body, and sort of, it's helpful, especially for my neurodivergent students who need that imagery or need that kind of visual part to help them through the exercise.
Great, yeah. When I'm explaining CBT, I'll tell them about Here Comes a Thought from Steven Universe. And because I sometimes sing, I'm like, you watch Steven Universe? Like, no. Like, but there's this awesome song, and it'll explain it exactly. Here comes a thought. And then we'll play the video in session. And they're like, oh, I get it. I can just release my thought. I don't have to buy into it. I'm like, oh, Steven Universe, so brilliant. But yeah, thank you all so much for sharing. I would love to keep some time for questions from the audience, if anyone has any. Yes.
I've seen a joke circulating online that's like the new Disney trope is, it used to be the Prince Charming trope, and now it's getting an apology from your parents.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of students that work with a big stressor in their life is tension within the family dynamic. I'm curious if any of you feel like that is relevant to your work or your insights are on that.
How many people cried about the rocks and everything everywhere all at once?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like they're rocks, but it was about a parent and trying to reconcile. That's a huge thing. There's a huge hit in China about Neiza, which is coming out in English very soon. So if y'all go watch Neiza, he's a little demon child on fiery wheels. But my partner and I just watched that, and yeah, in this generation, the ultimate wish, honestly, despite this little fire child having all this power in the world, is to get some kind of apology or validation, especially from parents. So I've definitely had clients talk about just, crying over the rocks and wishing they could have this, be seen by their parents.
Yeah, that's super salient. Working with athletes, so many of them come in, and it's the first time that they get to say how they actually feel, and you'd be surprised by how many of them, including the ones that have literally become the best in the world at something, say, I don't even like doing this. Like, I don't even like the sport. And the relationship there is like, it's a lot of the times because of the parents. The parents like pressure, the parents like pushing them. But it's a lot more complex than that too, because so many of them hold that like sort of mixed feeling. I hate doing this, and if I could have chosen anything else, I would have done something else. I'm essentially traumatized from my experience, and then it's like, but I think it was good. I think it made me into who I am, and I think that's good. And so like, there's a real mixed emotion there, and a real like space for exploration. Like, how does this affect you, not just emotionally, but how did it help you become the person that you are today? And then in other ways, how did it hurt you maybe? And what parts need to be healed from that? And yes, one huge healing piece might be like, if you got an apology from a parent, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I think one more like population to add here is first-gen students,
Mm-hmm.
who often are the first to do anything in their family, right, above and beyond, and there creates the sense of disconnect, right? Like, I've done these things, or I've seen these things, or I've learned these things that my family may not actually comprehend, right, or understand. And to try to get that sense of validation, right, or understanding, to have this shared conversation, can be really challenging for them. It's like, how do I even approach this conversation? Or I go back home and I don't even feel like I'm the same family member anymore, right? I can't have these conversations. So I've seen that also as well with my work with college students.
I guess I have a different take on it, like, because our parents are also products of their own generational trauma, and so sometimes it's about creating empathy for what they've gone through and what they've passed on because they didn't know any better. They don't have resources like our students do now. I get surprised when my Asian clients tell me that their Asian parents told them to go to therapy. I'm like, what? What are we coming to? I don't know what that means. But there is, I'm so grateful, I think, for pop culture, because pop culture, sports, movies, we're just seeing so much therapy. Like, even like in Avengers, they were in group therapy with the Russo brothers. And I'm like, whoa, let's put this on a broad level that it is okay to feel things and have a human experience. And the hope is that our students will start part of that intergenerational healing to say the stigma of mental health is not something that we need to carry down, but instead encourage. And so hopefully you'll know that people like us, people in all of the panels that are here today exist, and that we are here to support your students, and we are here to support healing in general, because there is a ripple effect, you know. Some of the most, like, beautiful moments is like when they'll tell us like how things have shifted in their families and in their communities. And so, so yeah, I haven't seen a cue card. Am I on time?
Look, if you miss it- I mean, I want
Yeah.
to say thank you all for even coming to mental health panel.
Yeah.
Every single one of us has a role to play in making our families and our communities less stigmatizing and more supportive. We really do. Just if the people around you get to hear you say like, yeah, I think people should be like working on insight and not waiting until they're crashing and burning. Or I am okay to talk about this. It's a huge gift, and every one of you play a huge role in that in our communities.
Yeah. All right. I got a card. Okay. So just wanted to say thank you all so much for being here, and to thank our incredible panel. I know we'll stay in touch. This has been really wonderful getting to know all of you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your humor, your authentically nerdy selves, and for redefining what therapy can look like in the context of the dumpster fire that is current day. So have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and enjoy the con. Thank you. Picture? Let's take a picture, y'all.
Yeah, for sure.